Good morning. Thanks very much for joining us. Well, these are certainly interesting times to be in politics in general, and specifically to be a Democratic congressman from Massachusetts. So we're pleased to have a chance to talk this morning with Congressman Joe Kennedy III, who represents the 4th Congressional District, which runs from Newton down to Fall River. Congressman, in a configuration, I was looking at the map this morning, knowing you were coming in, it kind of resembles Donald Trump's toupee. Did you ever notice that, the 4th District?
I hadn't actually made that connection.
Take a look, so you'll see what I mean.
Certainly will. It's a wonderful collection of constituents, which I'm very proud to represent.
Okay.
We'll start that way.
Good to have you here.
Thank you.
So there's a debate going on right now within the Democratic Party over how to deal with the Trump administration. And one camp argues all-out aggressive resistance on all fronts is the only way to go. Others say you can't just be the party of no. You've got to pick your spots and look for ways to work with the Republicans. Where do you stand?
I think, John, when it comes to issues that we've seen Donald Trump, the president, attack already, issues around the dignity of every single person, it does not matter in this country. It should not matter in this country. Your gender, who you love, what God you believe in, your ethnicity, where you came from, we fight back tooth and nail on every single affront that he brings up and his administration brings up. There is, though, also an underlying message from this election that an awful lot of people are hurting. And if Democrats, if the country refuses to acknowledge that message, we're going to be in real trouble. And so I do think when it comes to issues around economic investment, around infrastructure, around education, we need to find ways to move forward there. So I do think to the extent that Donald Trump comes at us with and comes at America on issues of identity and on issues of dignity, we have to fight back. It doesn't mean you fight on every single issue. You got to pick your spots. I will say I am not encouraged by how the administration has started off this first week.
Well, what's been the most daunting thing for you?
Trying to come up with the most out of this week has been, I don't know if I can give you a number of them. One, the idea that your first executive order was going to target health insurance for 30 million Americans, I think is just, it's hurtful. It's not the right way to start. I have been, since I've been in Congress, trying to find ways to increase and strengthen the Affordable Care Act. I've asked my Republican colleagues to work with us on that. It hasn't happened. I make the point continually that if you want to understand how this law can work and work well, Massachusetts is in a state right now with a 2.8% unemployment rate and a 2.8% uninsured rate. We actually, it doesn't mean we don't have our challenges, but we have shown that if you get the coalition together and consistently try to improve this law and make it work, you can make it work pretty well. Let's do that down in Washington, D.C., and let Massachusetts set the way.
Well, look, partisan gridlock has been a fact of life in Washington for a long time now. I remember Republicans railing about Democrats, or excuse me, Democrats railing about Republicans being the party of no during the Obama era. Now some are advocating the same thing. And just to bring it back to the local level, your colleague Seth Moulton, the congressman from the North Shore, this past week kind of ripped into Governor Baker for not voting in the presidential election, not making a fuss over controversial presidential appointments, not marching in the Women's March last weekend. Do you agree with Moulton?
Look, I think Governor Baker, I think these are issues that affect us, every single American, and I think Governor Baker has to show where he stands on these issues, right? And so I think I would encourage him to do so. I think people look to him as the leader of our Commonwealth and deserve to understand exactly where he stands on them. That being said, I think the governor has indicated on a number of areas where he stands. I give him credit for being one of the first governors to reject some of the immigration issues and actions that he said that Donald Trump came up with. So I think the governor can be doing more. I think he should be doing more. And Seth is a good friend, so I think he's got a point.
But you beg to differ a little bit.
I think that, look, if you're an elected official, I think it is your responsibility to take positions on these issues.
Okay.
And, you know, I respect the challenges that the governor has, but I do think it's up to him to make those positions clear as the leader of our state.
Okay, we'll take a short break. We'll continue our conversation with Congressman Joe Kennedy in just a moment. Please stay with us. Welcome back. We're talking with Congressman Joe Kennedy from the 4th District here in Massachusetts. And Congressman, there was a recent organizational meeting of Democrats, I believe out in Newton, in your district, where you spoke. And you said about Trump voters at that meeting that, quote, we, meaning the Democratic Party, lost their trust. What did you mean by that?
John, I think that there's, over the course of this campaign, it was one of the most divisive campaigns, certainly, that I've ever seen, and probably one of the most divisive campaign in recent American history. That being said, as I have traveled around the Commonwealth, traveled around our country, and been with my colleagues down in Washington, obviously many of whom supported Donald Trump, many Republicans who supported Donald Trump, we all have to recognize that here in Massachusetts, Donald Trump won over 1 million votes, or about 1 million votes. He won 90 towns. He won 6 communities in my district. And I think that now that we are in a new world and a new administration, it is right for anybody to try to take a step back and take stock of what happened in that election and what the message was. And as we said earlier, there's an awful lot of people out there that are hurting and that feel like their government isn't responding to them. And I think if Democrats continue just to double down and act as if this election didn't happen, that's our own folly.
Well, let's drill down on this a little bit. Give me an example of an issue where you believe Democrats blew it with these voters.
Look, I think that there's an awful lot more we can and should be doing on infrastructure and on educational investment. I know that these were priorities of an Obama administration. We weren't able to get some of it done given the resistance we had in Congress. But I think you saw a stat that came out earlier this week that there are more CEOs in Massachusetts than there are plumbers. That's great for our business community. It's crazy if you ever need a plumber. And the fact is that some of the vocational schools I have in my district are some of the best ones in the country. They're a great pathway to a solidly middle-class job without college debt. We should be able to and willing to invest in those schools. They have waiting lists now for kids that are trying to get into them. There's an entire ecosystem out there of advanced manufacturing, vocational schools, community colleges, which, when done right, are the best driver of economic mobility in this nation. So we need to be investing there. This is a place where Massachusetts absolutely has to take the lead, and I think we could be doing more.
Well, now that the lid is off Republican resistance to enhanced federal spending, right? You should have an opportunity there.
We might. Intellectual consistency has never necessarily been all that consistent in Washington. So there's an opportunity here. We'll see where it goes.
By the way, I hadn't heard that stat about the plumbers and the CEOs. You saying next time my toilet won't flush, I should call a CEO?
Probably not. But
might be easier to get one.
It might be easier to get one. I still would probably go with the plumber.
All right. Congressman, thanks.
Thank you, my friend.
Good to see
Always.
you. Come back again soon.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Now I'm going to send it back over to my colleagues for more WBZ News.